got all of our blocks cut out and ready to go. And per the instructions, we're going to do our navy and this kind of backfill color first. So we're going to take this whole block, and the instructions say to go corner to corner and draw a diagonal line. So you could do that with any ruler, and you're just going to get lined up with the corner on each side. And then once you draw that line, you're going, oh, that pin didn't show up at all. You can tell this is my most common method here. So we'll go corner to corner. I may need a new pen. There we go. All right, so we've got a nice crisp line. And the idea here is that when you take this to your sewing machine, you're gonna sew just 1/4 of an inch to this side and 1/4 of an inch to that side. The alternative is, and I love this little handy dandy tool, this says it's a quilter's rule, and we're going to do the similar thing. I'm going to line this up with the points, and so I'm kind of right over the top of that line that I just drew, and I'm going to go on either side. So this ruler is basically 1/2 inch wide with a center hole, so I could see where I was lined up and then spin it around. And now I'm going to have 3 lines, but really you only have to draw the 2, the one on each side. And now I've got a line to follow. See if that can show up a little bit better. Sorry, I need to just give up and get a new pen. It's always when you're filming, right? Okay, Uncle. Let's do green. All right. The Christmas quilt, and it didn't even know it. Okay, so I've got my green line now on each side, and then you just take this to your machine and you're going to sew it on each line, and then we're actually going to cut this original line, and that is something that you can do it this way, or you could just draw these lines on here and line up with your seam guide. Am I on? All right, so I've got my distance set to where I want it, and off we go. Now I didn't say this, but it's really important because you don't want your half square triangles to be the wrong way. We're actually putting the right sides of our fabric together so that when we fold them open, you'll have the pretty sides on the outside. So I have the back of the navy facing down and the back of this off-white facing down as well. Extra piece through, flip her around, and then we'll keep right on going. So I'm going to line up not with this center line but with the edge, and I've got this line, you can watch it, it's going to be lined up here with this red line in the center. So then we'll head over to our pressing station, and I will just set those seams, cut it apart, and press them open. Okay, so I set my seams really quickly with the iron, and I'm going to grab just a small ruler, and I'm going to go from corner to corner right between those 2 lines. Now that doesn't have to be perfect because it is already sewn. And then I'm going to take that back over to the pressing station, and I'm going to press that open. Now the other thing you can do with these nifty little quilter's ruler is it's shaped perfectly that I can trim off these little dog ears before I press it open. So it's got this kind of extra angle at the end that'll help you trim those before you press it. So if you haven't pressed them open, let me flip this guy over. If you haven't pressed, or excuse me, if you haven't cut those dog ears off, then you would need to come through and do that now. It's pretty simple to do, probably not with these curved scissors, as you're working around, or you can use the tool. And the other one is if you do it ahead of time, then as you pull it off of your pressing station, it's already going to have those corners clipped for you, be ready to go. I didn't do a very good job on that one. So we've got our first one done. Now we're going to be on to our green one. So for the green one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get one piece of M, one piece of O, and then I'm going to place those right sides together, and I'm going to sew down this diagonal line 1/4 inch from the corner. And it depends on how skilled you are at this. You can definitely wing it. You can use these lines on your tape to help you get through it. So if I line up right in the middle of the corner with the needle and the red line, then I'm going to sew right down the middle. But if I move the corners over to this line, I'm going to be sewing 1/4 inch away from this center line. I'm going to be sewing right here just next to it. But I do find that it is easier if you're doing something that is a little bit tedious, a little bit intricate, I guess is a better word, to just go ahead and draw the lines, because it is definitely easier to sew on a line than to just line up with the seam. And I actually really like to use both. Man, I am not having luck with these pins today. Okay, so we'll just run through these two sides real quick. I'll do it one more time. Down this side. Alright, and we'll be right back from the pressing station. Okay, so we finished just our basic half square triangles. Now we're going to do this block that's a little bit more complicated. I can't really see it that far away. It's going to be this block right here. So we're actually going to take a half square triangle and then put our triangle on it. Now the way that these instructions were written was actually to cut some of these squares on the bias before we sewed them. And you know, I try my best to be really accurate when I piece. However, I don't see a reason to swim uphill. Swim upstream, swim upstream. For me, I want to make it as easy as possible for myself. And if I cut things on the bias before I sew them down, it just is going to be more difficult to work with, and I have to be more careful all along. So if I can avoid it, I do. So I actually cut these out a little different than the original instructions were to have it, so that I can just make two more half square triangles, and once I get these sewn, then I will use them with the green triangle to get that put together. And I don't have to cut anything on the bias that's not already sewn down. Alright, and we'll head over to the pressing mat and the cutting table and get these separated and then pressed open. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to set the seams with a quick press, get my little cutting mat, and separate the two, go corner to corner. Again, this is in the seams already, so it doesn't have to be precise. And then I'm going to press this to one side, and actually I'm about to trim these blocks down, and so I'm going to go ahead and press this open so I get my seams as flat as possible first, and then I will trim the whole block down, because I want these to be 3.5 inch blocks, and this is the end of this step, if you will. There we go. So you see how if I had trimmed this on the other blocks, if I had waited till this step, I'd have to trim all four sides. It doesn't matter here because I am going to trim all four sides, but if I don't have to trim all four, I'd like to keep it that way. So let that sit for just a second, and then I will trim these guys down. Now I do like to flip these over, and I want to align this diagonal line with whatever's the longest line on the block. So I like that. You also have this kind of cross hatch here in the middle that'll help you find the true center. And I make these blocks just a hair big so that I can trim them down. I'd rather have a little too much than not enough. I thought I missed that corner. There we go. And you know, I have one of those little spinny mats, but I find like it's kind of hard to spin. I have one that I use downstairs when I'm cutting up my scraps while the kids are working on their homework, and it's actually like a Lazy Susan, so it has the ball bearings and all that good stuff in it, and it spins pretty freely, but most of the time here in my sewing room I just end up spinning the mat. Alright, so I get that lined up where I want it. I'm looking at my halfway lines as long as my diagonal, and I'm seeing that this is right on a corner, this is right on a corner, and that one's right on a corner. So I'm just going to trim it down, and then we are done with this portion of the block. Line that up again, and give her a quick trim. Alright guys, so there we have it. Now we have our two different corners, and I can't remember which way they're oriented, but they are different. So you'll notice the creamy lighter color is on the inside here and the outside of the navy, or vice versa, but they are opposites. When we go to piece those together, we're going to have to be careful, but these are ready to go on our design block to set aside until we get ready to piece the rest of it. We're finished with the half square triangles on this top part now. The next thing we're going to do is put these two together and these two together, and then we're going to sew these together in rows. So I'm going to start with these. And again, if you'd like to pin, you're certainly more than welcome to. I just usually kind of fly by the seat of my pants. I will chain piece these just to keep things a little easier, a little more streamlined. Now, I do always try to put my blocks back together on my design board. I feel like it really keeps me from getting mixed up and doing things out of order. So now that I've got these pressed open, I'm just going to sew together this top row, and then the next row, and then the next row, and then this bottom row will get sewed on last. Now this is this first and second block of row 2. And then I'm going to grab the first and second block of row 3, and then I'll press all 3 of these open at the same time, just to save a trip over to the ironing station. I always put them back on my design board unless I'm really familiar with that particular block, because it's easy to get from the ironing board and come back here and not have them oriented the right way. So I've got them back on my design board. Now I'm going to hit this seam, and there's nothing to sew together on those until we get done pressing these two open. Use a quick press. Now each section is sewn together, each row, so I'm going to sew the top row to the second, to the third, to the fourth, and then we'll go and press those open. These pieces matter a little bit more than some of the other ones, so I'm going to probably go ahead and pin because I really want these to line up. You don't have to, but it does make it a little easier if you really want to keep those seams aligned. So I'm just going to do a pin on the back side of each of the seams where they want to line up, and off we go. also want to make sure that the seams I've pressed open on the back are staying flat as they roll under the presser foot. They don't flip backwards. Look at this. Make sure I like where they're all lined up. And I do, so we'll press it and move on to the next row. And once that's pressed, I'm going to go ahead and add this row and then this row, and we'll meet right back here. One more really easy seam. We're just going to add this to this outside border, and then we're going to take I and B and make our half square triangles just like we did last time. Okay, so again, I'm going to put my right sides together. And on this white dot pattern, if you're using the same fabric as I am, do be careful because it would be really easy to put the wrong side up. Okay, so again, I'm going to try the green pen. I'm going to line up right on the corner of the white and make my two lines. I'm just going to do the center line too, just to double check, because this is such a small piece. If I get out a square, it's going to be really obvious. Okay. So see how when I do it this way, I've got this line is on my black line over here. That's my other 1/4 inch seam. And then the line I'm sewing is coming down here in the red. Same thing we're going to do on this one we did on the last. I'm going to press it to set the seams, cut it apart, and then press them. The main body of our block is all together. Now we're going to add the white to the solid and the triangle, half square triangle. Make sure that that's oriented the right way, and then we'll add that to this block, and then we'll do these three together and then add them to the block. So I will speed this up so you don't have to sit through every piece of that. Sewed in my sticker. You know, you can iron these bad boys and do all kinds of things, but sewing them in is probably not what I wanted to do. I mean, it wouldn't be so long if y'all didn't get to watch me rip some stitches, right? Alright, I think that L may not get to be reused like my other ones. get all those little furries out, and off we go again.
So now those are pressed, and I've got them set out in my block just to double check and make sure I'm staying where I need to. I'm going to do this top row first, press it open, and then come do the side. Pay special attention to that first intersection. Make sure we get that exactly lined up. Sticker out so I don't stitch it in. Track of those points. There's one right under there. I know that's my 1/4 inch. It's nice because it's navy. It's really visible. Just make sure I'm not going to cut that off. While that's sitting under the clappers, I'm going to go ahead and do our very last top row and our very last side row, get those sewn together and pressed open, and then we'll attach them to our block, and we will be finished with this month's block. So I'm going to take E and J. Oops, my sticker's going renegade. And another piece of E and K. And I am keeping my stickers on K and J because those two, I mean, they are obviously different lengths, but they're very similar shapes, and I just find it's easier to reference if I can see it quickly like that. Final stretches, got them laid out, double checking my sides. Now this time we're going to sew the side on first and then the top. And then we press, and we are done with this block. Last seam. Well, I spoke too soon, so I forgot these blocks are set on point. So we actually have just a little bit more to do. So first we're going to take our big white square of A, one of them, and one square of F. I guess there's actually only one of F. And we've drawn a diagonal line down the middle of F, and now I'm just going to sew along that line. And then we'll go set this seam and then cut that additional fabric. So I went ahead and pressed that open, and I went ahead and cut it on the diagonal. I know that's not my favorite way to do it, but it is how we're going to do this last round. So we're just doing these outside pieces here that are going to make us kind of be on the point. So the blue triangles are going to go down here at the bottom. So I tried to orient this one so we can see it a little bit better. Unfortunately, my design boards are not quite large enough. So we're going to add this one to this side and this one to this side. It looks like for the pressing instructions on these, we are just pressing towards the new pieces. And then we have the one white block. That's the wrong side. No, it's not. And we'll add these to the top. So we're just going to go one at a time, and actually I guess I could probably go opposite corners. So we'll do two and then press and then do the last two. Here we go. I'm actually going to pin these because of all of the bias here. So I'm going to check my distance. We are going to have a little bit of corners hanging off on both sides. So I'm just going to kind of center that. Two down, two to go. I am going to go ahead and trim up these little corners real quick before I sew the next sides on. Okay guys, so that's a wrap. This is our first block in this sew along. We're going to be doing these once a month. The pattern comes in the Fat Quarter Shop Sew Sampler box. It's called Pieceful Baskets, and it is also available on their website, so I'll be sure and put a link in the description below. I would love to see what you're sewing with this, if you're using this same Shoreline fabric by Camille Roskelley, or if you're doing something completely different. As always, it would really help me out if you would like and subscribe if you enjoy seeing these types of videos and tutorials, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.